Hello everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are continuing our BDSM 101 series, and we are going to be talking about praise kink, also sometimes called affirmation play. But what is that? What am I even talking about? Well, a cursory Google search would tell you nothing, as I soon found out when I was doing the research for this video. The closest thing I could find to a definition was basically just a statement that it is what it sounds like. It's a form of play where one party enjoys being overloaded by compliments and praise from another, but in true BDSM 101 fashion, I cannot just leave it there. We are going to do a good old-fashioned deep dive. We are going to be going over in detail exactly what praise kink is, how to use it in scenes, why people might like it, what form it takes, and comparisons to other more common types of BDSM play. So if anything in that sounds interesting to you, please do stick around. We're going to go ahead and get into the discussion. So what is a more complete definition for what praise kink is? The way that I would describe it is it's a form of BDSM play where one person enjoys being overwhelmed with positive affirmations emotionally, mentally, physically about their body, attributes, just something about them, actions they are performing. They enjoy being complimented and enjoy being praised. In the context of BDSM, because I am talking about this specifically in a BDSM context, not in a general vanilla sex fanfiction-y context, specifically within BDSM, this typically takes the form of a submissive being praised by their dominant partner. It could also exist within a top-bottom relationship, but it appears to be more common within existing power exchange dynamics. Now, one thing that I do want to make sure to state before we get too far into this video is that there is no one set definition for what praise kink or affirmation play even is. The only sources I could really find for it were from fanfiction or on Tumblr. There doesn't seem to be a larger community consensus about what this is, so the definition I'm using is purely my own opinion, and it could very well be that you have this as part of play that you do, but you describe it and relate to it totally differently from anything that I talk about here, and that's okay. And if that is something that describes your experience, please make sure you leave a comment down below. Let me know, what do you think about this type of play? Is this something you do? Is your definition any different? You know, just let me know. How did you guys find out about this? Because I'm so curious, because it does seem to be a relatively new phenomena, a relatively new form of play that I haven't seen a lot of information out there about. Now, as well, praise kink or affirmation play goes above and beyond the typical affirmations you might have within a power exchange relationship. It is very common in all but very specific TPE relationships to have a dom praise a submissive for a job well done, to say good girl or good pet or good boy or what have you, to give pats on the head, kisses on the cheeks, you know, that sort of thing. This goes above and beyond that, because it's not just about a little, you know, thank you, a little note at the end of the scene saying you did a good job, although for people who are really into this, that's probably more than enough stimulus. It's about making the praise the focus of the play itself. The praising is the play. It's not the end note of a scene. It's not a little thank you after something else has already been done. It's the point of the activity. It's a provocation. It's a reason to engage in something. It's a way of egging a partner on. There's so many different ways that this sort of play can be done, although it is important to keep in mind it goes above and beyond just the normal everyday things that you might see within a DS dynamic. Now, what forms of praise kink are there? In my research, I discovered there were approximately 3 main categories under which praise kink could exist in terms of why people did it, how they did it in scenes, and so forth. So the first one is what I would call the embarrassment type of play. The root for this comes from the fact that we are not generally taught how to accept compliments. It can be deeply uncomfortable for some people to have to sit with the fact that they were just told their eyeliner is on fleek, or that they did a great job on a presentation, and that can provoke feelings of embarrassment, having to sit with that discomfort, having to come to terms with those compliments. It can lead to stammering, blushing, averting eyes, sort of, oh shucks, no, stop it. I couldn't possibly actually be as good as you're telling me that I am. And so the pleasure for this type of play actually comes from the embarrassment and discomfort that can come from being complimented. It's sort of like an emotional pain play. And I'll talk more about this when I get to the comparison with humiliation. Spoiler alerts. The second type would be what I would call the live to please type. This is very common, I believe, among service-oriented people, pets, or non-bratty littles. Although this is by no means a type of play that brats would not be into. I am sure there is overlap, but specifically with this type of play, it is usually associated with people who enjoy doing a good job. They enjoy living up to expectations. They enjoy being able to meet their partner's needs, and so for them, praise kink is about being affirmed as being a good partner, being affirmed that they did a good job, that they performed an action well, and the line of pleasure is very direct. In comparison with sort of the more embarrassment form of this play, which is sort of like this weird relationship about like the discomfort being a pleasurable thing, it's a very direct line where knowing that they did a good job is what they want to hear, and that is what fills up their meter for them. The third type is what I would call the valued type. This is very closely related to the second one, which is the live to please type. And in this, rather than having an emphasis on achieving things or about being good or just about, meeting expectations, this tends to be a little bit more physically based. It tends to be a little bit more about being seen as beautiful, about being seen as worthy. Oh, you have such a beautiful body. You are my moon and my stars. You are my everything. That sort of praise tends to be more associated with this form of play. It tends to be a little bit more physical, although of course they are definitely very closely related. And like with the live to please type, this also has a very, very direct connection in terms of the reason why somebody would find it enjoyable. It's not about feeling embarrassed. It's not usually overly complicated. It's just a pure dopamine hit to be complimented by a partner and being told that you have wonderful eyes or a great ass or whatever it happens to be that the person is focusing on. Now, I want to talk about relationships to other types of play, simply because in the world of BDSM, praise kink is not something that I've seen discussed a lot, but there are a lot of very similar forms of play that maybe you're more familiar with, that you could overlap, or are existing kinks for you. And the first type would be body worship. This is very common, especially in male sub, female dom type of dynamics. I would consider this the power exchange inverse sort of to praise play. So in praise play, what's happening is typically the submissive is being praised by the dominant, whereas in body worship or other forms of dominant worship, it is the dominant partner that is being complimented. So usually this will take the form of the submissive begging at the feet of, or groveling at, or offering really over-the-top affirmations of, or looking at the boots of, or kissing the feet of, or kissing the hand of their partner, just being very, very over-the-top, being very reverential towards whatever body part it happens to be, or something that the dominant is wearing, or directly on something that the dominant has as like a physical attribute, something along those lines. And within the realm of body worship, or just dominant worship in general, this can take on a lot of different attributes. So depending on exactly what form it is, it may look differently. There may be different emphasis in there. So some common ones would be, for example, foot worship, boot worship, vagina worship, goddess worship. There's a ton of different types of worship out there, but hopefully you can kind of see how this relates to praise kink. Now, the second form of this that's very similar would be humiliation play. And this one is interesting because at the same time as it's very similar to praise kink, it can also be quite different. So in humiliation play, usually that would involve some kind of verbal put down, making fun of a specific body part, making somebody do or say something that would be embarrassing. And in praise kink, generally speaking, you kind of invert that. So rather than making fun of something, you're complimenting it, you're praising it. But mentally, especially for people who have an embarrassment type relationship to praise play, that can have very, very similar effects as humiliation. So they can actually be very closely related. But on the opposite end, if you are somebody who is into this but has a more direct pleasure connection to being praised, it is not like humiliation at all. So that's just a little bit of an interesting comparison. Now, the third one I would say is similar to praise kink would be orgasm control / orgasm torture. I know, it's a little bit out there, but wait a second, hear me out. So, with orgasm torture or orgasm control, usually what that means is you are being overwhelmed with physical pleasure. You are being forced to orgasm, maybe even potentially when you don't really want to, because CNC is totally a thing. But what is praise kink if not being overwhelmed with positive feelings and emotions and being forced to sit with that emotion? And as well with orgasm torture, orgasm control, one of the other pleasures that can go along with it is not just the sheer physical pleasure of it, but the embarrassment of not having control over your own body, feeling embarrassed that you can't control your own responses. And that can definitely be something that happens with praise-related play as well. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about here are ideas for praise-related play, because this would not be a 101 video if I didn't tell you guys some examples for how you can incorporate this into your scenes. And one of the really fun things about praise play is how versatile it is, how many different ways you can incorporate it into existing scenes, no matter what your other kinks could be. So one example of this, if you are into rough body play, would be to pin the submissive down on the ground and just overwhelm them with compliments as they can't struggle out of your grasp. If you are more into bondage, a different approach would be, as you are tying the person up or putting on cuffs, whispering dirty things in their ear that are complimentary about their body or something along the lines of, "I love the way that you look in my robe." If you are a little bit more of a disciplinarian, one way you could do this is by forcing the submissive to write lines. Usually this is associated with punishment, so for example, "I promise I will not drink chocolate milk without permission." Rather than doing it like that, you instead force the submissive to write lines in such a way that it compliments their body or compliments one of their achievements, such as, "I did a good job getting an A+ on that test," or "My master loves my booty," or whatever else it happens to be. Now, something else that you can do as well that's related to this, but is a little bit more applicable to during scenes as opposed to something that's maybe an outside activity for a DS relationship, would be to have the submissive partner repeat positive things about themselves over the course of a scene. So for example, if you're doing a spanking scene, between each hit, you would have them say, for example, "I am a good boy, spank." Okay, again, "I am a good boy, spank," and so on and so forth. And you can mix it up, add in other things, and it's very, very versatile as well. So my final suggestion is a little bit more on the embarrassment side of things. So with this, what you would do is you would have the submissive partner do something that's ridiculously easy that you know that they know how to do. And then once they do it, you just overwhelm them with praise that is absolutely way too much for the thing that they were doing. Like, you just give them a standing ovation, like they are winning an Oscar, they are doing the best job ever, and you just completely overload them with how much praise there is, especially in comparison to the thing they just did. And that is all of the suggestions I have for now. If you guys have any additional thoughts about types of play, feel free to leave that down in the comment section below. I think that is enough suggestions from me for now. One thing that I do want to make sure people remember is that, again, this is a relatively new-ish form of play, at least in terms of the fact that it has a specific label. So there's not really a concrete form of how this is supposed to be done. So feel free to experiment, try things out for yourself, and just see how it goes. Now, the last thing I want to make sure to end on today would be talking about potential pitfalls. Compared to things like handcuffs, praise play is not generally considered super high risk, but there is one specific thing that I want to make sure people are aware of, and that is caution around engaging in this type of play when it comes to low self-esteem / low self-worth / low confidence issues. BDSM can definitely be therapeutic, but it is not therapy. This is a phrase I have said multiple times in many of my videos, and it is definitely still true. There may be a temptation, either from the submissive or the dom participating, to use praise play as a way to help kind of plaster over issues with self-confidence. However, this is really just a temporary fix. It shouldn't be a long-term solution because, at least from my understanding, typically if all of your self-worth is coming solely from one person's compliments about you, if something happens to that person, if something changes in the relationship, or for whatever reason that praise stops happening, the confidence goes away. And so if you're looking to deal with self-esteem or related issues like that, praise play is not the way to do that long term. Now, it can be a way of helping somebody recognize issues. It can be a way of helping somebody get onto a more healthy mindset of feeling empowered to change their own thought patterns, but it should never be the only thing by itself that you do in order to try and work through these issues. So I would definitely say that you could still engage in this type of play if you are somebody who struggles with these issues. It's just important to be upfront about it and really be in touch with yourself in your motivation for this type of play. But I think that's everything that I wanted to discuss today. Please let me know your thoughts about this. Do you guys have any feelings about praise kink or about affirmation play? Is this something you're already familiar with? Do you have any suggestions or thoughts? I would love to know what you think down in the comment section below, and I am always curious to hear what people have to say, especially because the research I could find on this video was so very limited. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week. And finally, if you really enjoyed this video, if you want to help support this channel, the best way you can do that is through Patreon. That is what keeps this channel going. That is what allows me the time to be able to do this research, to make these more in-depth 101 videos. Also, it allows me to offer you guys a lot of exclusive perks and rewards, like photo shoots, extra videos, live streams, so on and so forth. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please do check it out down in the description box below. If you do already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.